Our AP Statistics final presentation was determining if the same proportion of players drop into each of the 20 locations in Fortnite Battle Royale. Before we begin, it is important to understand how Fortnite works. Fortnite Battle Royale is a free-to-play Battle Royale game developed and published by Epic Games. Players must scavenge for weapons and armor to gain the upper hand on their opponents. The main gameplay for Fortnite Battle Royale follows the Battle Royale genre standard format. Up to 100 players, alone, in duos or in squads of up to 4, skydive then deploy a glider from floating buses called a battle bus onto a consistent map, which includes random distributions of weapons, shield, and other combat support features. The goal is to be the last player, or team if playing in small squads, alive by eliminating or avoiding other players. Over time, the game's safe zone, representing the eye of a storm that is ravaging the world, decreases in size, and players caught outside the zone will take damage, potentially dying. This directs the surviving players into tighter spaces, forcing player encounters. Players can loot defeated enemies for equipment. Random supply drops will occur during a match, providing random weapons and items. This video game has rapidly become popular throughout the world, and determining any type of strategy that may be useful may help a player immensely. Once again, we are determining if the same proportion of players drop into each of the 20 locations on Fortnite Battle Royale, all of which can be seen on the map to the right. The reason we chose Fortnite as the topic for our final project is because it has become a very popular game throughout the world, and it is our personal favorite video game. Although the information acquired from performing this test does not provide directly beneficial strategies, it can be used as common knowledge to know how many enemy players someone can expect at a given location in any given game. Our null hypothesis is that the proportion of players that drop into each of the 20 locations is the same for each location. That is to say that approximately 5% of players land in each location. Our alternative hypothesis is that at least one of these locations has a proportion that differs from the expected 5%. We will establish our alpha at 0.01 and we will perform a chi-square goodness of fit test with 19 degrees of freedom. The method we used to collect our data was relatively simple. We each played 5 games like we normally would, meaning that we each attempted to win a game. Regardless of whether we won or not, we watched the entire game and then went into the in-game recording tool and counted the number of people that landed in each location, excluding ourselves. We repeated until we played a combined number of 10 games, with a final sample size of 790 players out of an approximate 1,000 players that actually landed in a specific location. The data in the table is the raw data we acquired from counting the number of people that landed in each of locations for 10 games. As you can see, the number of players that landed in Tilted Towers is much greater than every other location. This is better shown in the pie graph, which indicates that approximately 1/4 of all players in our study landed at Tilted Towers. Finally, the box plot shows the ranges, quartiles, medians, and means of the 5 most popular locations. The first and most remarkable piece of evidence supporting our alternative hypothesis is the pie graph. It clearly shows that the percentages, ranging from 1.5% to 25.2%, are not all in proportion. The second piece of evidence is the box plot because the minimum values for Tilted Towers is significantly greater than the maximum values of the 4 next most popular locations. The reason for Tilted Towers' popularity is likely due to its urban landscape, which promotes more fighting and thus a more enjoyable experience. The conditions for a chi-square goodness of fit test are: number 1, SRS, since every game begins as a simple random sample of 100 players. Number 2, it is known that there are more than 7,900 Fortnite Battle Royale players on Xbox One. And number 3, all expected counts are greater than or equal to 5, and all observed counts are greater than 0. Since we stated in our null hypothesis that we believe that the number of people landing in each location is in proportion, the expected count for all the locations would be 790 divided by 20, or 39.5. The formula to find the chi-square value is observed minus expected squared over expected. After plugging in all our data, the chi-square value is 853.038. After plugging this value into the chi-squared CDF function, we receive a p-value of 1.1265 times 10 to the negative 168. This p-value indicates that the probability that we would get the results we got, given that the null hypothesis was true, meaning that the same proportion of players landed in each location, is 1.1265 times 10 to the negative 168. which is extremely small. Since our p-value is less than the alpha of 0.01, we reject the null hypothesis. There is sufficient evidence to suggest that at least one of these locations has a proportion that differs from the expected 5%. It is very, very, very unlikely that we committed a type 1 or type 2 error because of how small our p-value was. One limitation that we had is the bias that arrives from the new challenges that the game provides every week. These challenges provide incentives for players to perform certain tasks in certain locations by guaranteeing that player extra experience points to level up. As a result, during different weeks or even during different days in a single week, the sample may be skewed in the direction of whatever location the weekly challenge is promoting. We can improve our project by expanding it to determine the location from which the most winners land. This may provide evidence not that landing in a certain area will increase a player's odds of winning, but rather provide evidence of the most popular location of the best or experienced players. This information may be used effectively by avoiding these locations in order to avoid these skilled players and thus increase one's time spent alive.